From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
Montana will soon get some coronavirus vaccine, but not as much as we need or want. Coming up, just how many doses are headed here in December and the choices that will force.
In the meantime, virus infections continue to spiral up in Montana. Coming up, Dr. Anthony Fauci weighs in on the situation in the state and what residents need to do to protect themselves and others.
Well, good morning, Southwest Montana. It's just ahead of 6:30 on this Thursday, December 3rd. Chet Lehman, Holly Brantley, Matt Elwell with you here. Christmas lights are on the patio.
Indeed,
Temperature is brisk, to say the least, out there.
I get to go out to the patio here in a few minutes.
Right out
Lucky
front of the
you.
Christmas
I've got
lights.
extra layers, so you need extra layers as you're
gonna
stepping
want
outside.
'em.
You're gonna want them. If you missed that earlier, thank
You're
thank
gonna
your
wanna
lucky stars.
rewind.
No, you won't. Temperatures into the single digits and teens this morning for most of the area. Looks like we're going to be dealing with clear skies for most of the next handful of days. Daytime highs today for Bozeman, mid to upper 30s, low 30s in Butte. It is chilly. You're going to want to grab that coat on the way out the door. We'll talk more about what you can expect coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Matt. 6:30 now. During a COVID news conference, Governor Steve Bullock said the state of Montana could receive its first round of COVID vaccine doses in just a few weeks.
MTN's John Riley has more from the state capitol.
The federal government has informed Governor Bullock initial shipments of the COVID-19 vaccine could arrive in the state as early as December 15th or 16th.
Well, we don't know the exact number. We expect, or have been told, about 9,750 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And then we'll likely be receiving several thousand more doses in subsequent weeks.
The state's first allotment will focus on vaccinating healthcare workers, of which there are more than 40,000 in the state. The Pfizer vaccine requires 2 doses that need to be administered 3 weeks apart to be fully effective. The Pfizer vaccine requires 2 doses that need to be administered 3 weeks apart to be fully effective. Bullock says realistically, it will still be many months before a vaccine is widely available for the general population. The state just saw its deadliest month for the virus and stresses the importance of wearing a mask and limiting contact with people outside your home where possible.
This is the reality that we must continue to live with until there's a widely distributed vaccine. That time will come, but until then, Montanans need to stay true to our neighborly spirit of looking out for others in challenging times.
At the press conference, Bullock also laid out how all of Montana's $1.25 billion in CARES Act funding will be spent by the end of the year deadline. $833 million went to more than a dozen grant programs, with business stabilization being the highest in need. $200 million went to local governments, and $417 million went to non-grant programs like COVID testing and National Guard response. Governor Bullock also once again called on Congress to pass additional CARES Act funding, noting that Montanans and Montana businesses desperately need it. Reporting in Helena, John Riley, MTN News.
Well, it has been 8.5 months since the first coronavirus case confirmed here in the Treasure State.
Since that time, more than 64,000 people have been diagnosed with the disease and 739 Montanans have died.
MTN's Janelle Slade has an assessment of the virus in Montana from the nation's leading expert.
With concern about the coronavirus surge, the holiday season upon us, and today, the UK, the first country to approve the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine with distribution to start next week. We want to go straight to the top to get some perspective. So today, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the country's top infectious disease specialist, joins us here on MTN. Dr. Fauci, thank you so much for your time.
Good to be with you.
Well, let's start with developing news today and your reaction to the announcement that the UK will start distributing the vaccine next week.
Well, that's fine. They did not scrutinize the data as carefully as our own FDA is doing. They're in the process of doing that now. It is very likely that vaccine will begin to be distributed in the United States. The first batch from Pfizer likely on the 10th or 11th of December, and for Moderna around the 18th of December. So the difference is really a matter of a week and a half, not much difference at all.
Here in Montana, tighter mandates are hotly debated. In fact, many Montanans, including some Republican state legislators, recently chose not to wear their masks inside the state capitol. What do you want to say to Montanans who are making this choice?
Yeah, I don't want to accuse them or in any manner or form be pejorative to them. But I would ask them and almost plead with them to look at the data. We have 267,000 deaths and close to 14 million infections in this country. That if you have a state like Montana, which doesn't have a lot, you have Billings, which has the major medical center there. You have about 25 ICU beds in that hospital. The last time we checked, you had more ICU patients than you had IC beds for them. That's a problem.
How quickly is this actually going to turn around?
Well, the vaccine is going to be given in incremental fashion to the various people in the different priority groups. By the time you get to the normal man and woman in the street in Billings or in anywhere in Hamilton, wherever you want to be, who's a 25, 30-year-old person who's otherwise healthy, that likely will be somewhere in April where they will have open access to the trial. And then by the time you get through April, May, June, you'll have most of the people vaccinated so that you could start looking at some sort of return to a normality as we get through the summer and into the fall.
And Dr. Fauci says he plans to continue in his role at the National Institute of Health and also play a role in President-elect Biden's coronavirus task force. In Billings, Janelle Slade, MTN News.
Well, Missoula County Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer says the very nature of the county signing on the new Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority shows a widespread interest in returning passenger trains to southern Montana.
MTN's Dennis Bragg has the story.
I'm Dennis Bragg in Missoula. With the final county signing off on the idea of forming the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, now the real work begins to bring passenger rail service back to southern Montana.
With Powell County signing the joint resolution last week, the new Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority becomes official, opening the way for an effort to restore passenger rail to Montana's southern route for the first time in more than 40 years. Now the real work begins.
Each of the 12 participating counties will appoint members to the initial board of directors of the Rail Authority, and then we'll go about scheduling our first board meeting, and I hope that will happen sometime in the month of December or at the latest January.
Strohmeyer first pitched the idea last fall, but he's been promoting the concept for well over a decade. He's encouraged with the different counties signing on, saying it shows a diversity of support.
It's been my goal all along to make sure that folks, whether you live in a rural part of Montana or an urban area, recognize the value that passenger rail can bring to you and your community and your friends and neighbors. And that has really played out in the 12 founding counties of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. And I think that adds credibility that this is not just a Western Montana or an urban thing, but folks across the state find value in it.
And as the Passenger Rail Authority is formed and an old idea is brought back to the table, could the trains run over Homestake Pass?
That route has been defunct for decades, so the path of least resistance in terms of an operational rail line currently goes through Helena. That's just recognizing that line is in use today. That would be the easiest line to probably get back into service. But for the folks who live in Butte and Silver Bow County and southwest Montana, they've said loud and clear that they at least want that option on the table.
It's now up to the authority to figure out how to convince federal officials passenger trains should roll between Billings and Missoula and points in between. In Missoula, Dennis Bragg, MTN News.
Dennis tells us that move comes even as Amtrak has been moving to cut service across the Highline route, but backers are confident in the long-term merits of this proposal. 6:38, now we're going to take a quick break here on Montana This Morning. When we come back, they're lining up to set an example. After the break, see how 3 former U.S. presidents hope to encourage everyone to get a COVID-19 shot.
But first, here's a look at what's coming up at 7 on CBS This Morning.
Good morning to you. Ahead on CBS This Morning, COVID vaccines are on the way, but cases continue to surge. The Surgeon General will share how he's trying to get Americans to protect themselves and others from the coronavirus. Also, we'll take you on board a Boeing 737 MAX for its very first flight with passengers since being grounded nearly 2 years ago. We'll show you what's changed. And 30 years ago, The Godfather Part 3 premiered. It was panned by critics. Remember that? First on CBS This Morning, legendary director Francis Ford Coppola tells Anthony about recutting the movie and how he thinks he finally got it right. Didn't we love all the Godfather movies? I'll go first. Yeah, we did. See you at 7 o'clock on the dot.